Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast. I'm your usual host, Kevin, and today I have someone who I am quite a big personal fan of, someone who I've known for a while. Today I'm speaking with Van Haas. Early on in his family's business, everything, quote unquote, business just fascinated Van. He graduated UCSB with a double major in communication and economics. Later on, he became a key player in leading a profitable company through what he terms accelerated growth. He just means it was really successful. He is also currently the founder of Accountix, a bookkeeping and consulting firm that satisfies his passion for both process and tech. Van, we're going to have a lot to talk about. I'm so excited to kind of explore what you do, why you do it, how you do it. It's going to be great to talk to you. So I'm glad you're here.
Thanks so much, Kevin. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Let's begin at the beginning. Start at the start. Your superhero origin story. How did you end up choosing to do what you do, which is sort of actually maybe talk a little bit about what you do and the way you go about doing it, because most people will hear, accounting and they think numbers, they think by the books, they think, math, precision, get it done, necessary, super valuable, also very trust-based. But I think the way you approach it has a lot more to do with coaching and consulting than most people would think. So talk about how you got your start, deciding that was the way you wanted to go about doing this, and then, everything about that journey.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, it's been a lot of learning to get to, I think, where we're at today. Everyone feels that way as they progress on. But it started super early on. I still remember as a younger kid, my parents had a small business. They did like garment printing and embroidery, and I was involved in that business, helping on the embroidery machines. And then later, as I got a little older, actually, going to trade shows and reviewing contracts for machines and putting my 2 cents in as a 16, 17-year-old kid. But it really just fascinated me, all the moving parts of the business. Then, fast forward later into college, I had this one professor that I still remember. And he was a professor, but he also did a lot of consulting. And so he brought in all these stories of consulting into his classes and talked about these, big corporations he was helping, with their strategy and making these big decisions. And I just always remember sitting in that class thinking, God, that would be so cool to do that kind of work. And then as a professional, I forgot all of that and went to work for a few companies. And like you said, I worked for a really successful company, helped them grow a lot. And yeah, as I sort of got into that a bit, I think I was in it maybe, I don't know, 7 years, something like that. And I was kind of reevaluating, like, okay, I'm getting into my later 20s and I sort of want to do something, that desire to start my own business kind of was coming back to me. And started like thinking, well, what have I done? How can I take advantage of the experience that I've kind of fallen into? And I remembered a consulting firm that the company I worked for had hired. And I remembered even then sitting in those meetings and watching these guys work, thinking, God, that would be such a cool job to be able to come into all these different businesses, hold these meetings, help them figure out their problems and, get solutions and that kind of thing. And in the end, I decided to quit my really successful job and, great benefits and high paying to start my own thing. And actually I went to work for that consulting firm, and was going to end up, was thinking about buying their practice in the town I was in. This was in Sacramento, California. And, that was in 2009, which was a really bad time to be a coach because the economy fell out and no one was really interested in paying for consulting fees. They were just trying to have their business survive. And Sacramento was particularly hard hit by the big economic hit there. So I decided, well, I need to pivot and ended up, that's when I started my first coaching business. So that was all around cost savings and profit improvement, because I felt like that's what I did in my previous role. I was very involved in cost cutting and process and thinking about, how to be more efficient and effective. And so sort of built that business for a number of years and was pretty successful in certain areas of it. But the one thing I didn't like about it is very hard to scale. I was having a really hard, time figuring out how am I going to get this beyond just me as a solo coach. And I didn't want to be that. I wanted to have, sort of a business that would scale up. I still love coaching and wanted to continue that, but, needed something else. Yeah. And that's where this idea of Accountix sort of came to me. And having done this kind of consulting, it worked for like these really large corporations. So I worked for like some really large corporations, $1 billion like public companies on a very narrow, thing. I just helped them look at one specific cost item, right, and help them cut that cost. But that was okay, but it didn't fire me up as much as working with the small businesses, and they needed someone to come in and look at a whole slew of things, right? And as started working with them and seeing their financials, there was a lot to be desired in those financials, right? It was even very successful, 10, 20, $30 million small businesses, family owned, closely held. These guys a lot of them had financials that just didn't really help them see the business, right? Or there were just problems in the financials. And that slowly but surely that started giving me this idea of adding in all of that accounting and bookkeeping into the mix. And so that was the kind of the basis for Accountix. It was, instead of having a bookkeeper, that you outsource to, or a bookkeeper that you hire, and then a consultant that you hire in separately, perhaps it's what I envisioned is something a little different. Cloud-based tools are out there that allows a whole different way of working with clients in this space. So, instead of just going to a one-to-one bookkeeper relationship, I really had this vision of doing an outsourced accounting department. And what that means is an accounting department usually is made up of multiple people, right? You have clerks, you have, kind of the data entry folks, you have some accountants that are maybe mid-tier, senior accountants, you have a controller that's kind of like process checking and making sure that all of the accounting is done properly and accurately. And then you usually have a CFO or someone who's playing that CFO role. Could be a coach, could be a consultant. And I thought, why aren't we doing that whole thing? Why aren't we doing the from beginning to end? Because then you really know everything, right? And you can help the business owner really think about what they're trying to achieve and help them achieve it. So that was really that's how we're a little different with Accountix is we do a lot of bookkeeping, right? We help a lot with payroll. We do a lot of these things, but we also do the more complex accounting. As businesses get more sophisticated, they need more sophisticated numbers. And so we'll help them get there. We help them look at the technology they're using, that interacts with the accounting department. So it could be your point of sale, it could be time clocks, it could be, other tools, inventory systems, and that kind of thing. So, we're very tech savvy, and we're going to help them get their technology flowing and right. But really the good stuff, the stuff that gets me fired up, is the coaching. Because business owners, they need all of that other stuff done well, so that then they can look at their reports or think about their decisions that they need to make, or problems and issues, and have some data to help back up their decisions. But I also feel pretty strongly that a coach also can't ignore the personal side either, right? We need to think about motivations and where are they trying to go, and holding people accountable, and kind of being there to help cheerlead them along maybe, but also hold them accountable when they need to be held accountable, and just help them think through goals and write them down. I mean, that's what coaches, to me, that's just one of the core responsibilities of a coach, is to help people actually put things down on paper and get their goals out, and their like sort through those feelings and waves of desires that come through to get to the heart of it. And that's the stuff that I really love to do, is help that business owner think about what they're trying to achieve, and then help them achieve it through using the numbers that are being generated.
Yeah, I love that. There are so many places I want to jump off there. I feel like I could do like a half dozen different podcasts about each individual thing, each different leg on the journey. But what I love is that you found out really early on, you're like, I love this guidance, this consulting, this being able to help and just provide good counsel and, help people discover what it is they want, what it is they're doing. And he's like, you thought it was neat. You're like, I like what they're doing. I like the way it looks. I like the way it helps. And then you go do some other stuff and you find out some other things. You start, get 2 degrees, join a company, make a lot of money, help a lot of people, learn a lot of things, see where things can be helpful, see where there's need, see where there's not, and also just experience not to put a fine point on it, but what does it for you? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you stoked? You're like, I get to go do this today. And you kept coming back to it, kept like circling around and gathering up information and skills and insight and connections and experience. And you just keep coming back to, I want to help people take care of all that stuff because it's all super important. But what I really want to do is I want to be there to help them discover why it's important and to teach them and help them to discover within themselves and within their company how to take that importance and put it into action and help them grow. And it just keeps coming back to that over and over again. It's like, quite frankly, almost every other coach I talk to, your own personal internal journey is a mirror of what you help other people to do. Which is ideal because you're drawing from this vast personal experience, all these lessons learned. You're like, you know what I want to do? I want to help somebody else, a lot of somebody else's if I can, feel this way about what they do and get to where they want to go the way that I have and am going. It's just not really much of a question there. There were so many cool things to talk about. I just wanted to say I love that mirroring and like how you really keep coming back to that. I just want to find a way to help serve and guide people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I never thought about it that way, and it's such a good way to think about it. Because if it does fire you up, right, then when you're having those moments of thinking about what you want to do and what you want this business to be, it's probably inevitable that that's going to kind of find its way in there, right? Because it's what fires you up. So that's a great observation.
It's also it's something that I find so, it's sort of like it's the part about coaching and being coached that almost doesn't get talked about enough, even though it is the single core attribute of coaching, is that just that connection, that like very emotional, very like personal one-to-one connection. And every coach has their particular thing that they help with, like an industry in particular, or a kind of service they provide. Like with you, it's like you have all these disparate parts of what accounting and bookkeeping means for a small to medium-sized business, especially as it grows. Things get complicated. You've got 10 different hands in 50 different pies trying to communicate and talk to each other and work together. And you're like, okay, let's get everybody rowing in the same direction, because that's going to make things not just easier, but really allow things to grow. And I'm like looking at the books for like a family run business, been around 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I can only imagine the mess that must have accrued over time. And you look at that and you just say, you're like, this is holding you back. You're okay. You have an operating business, you're successful, but my goodness, I see right now 57 different things that we can do, relatively tiny, some of them not so tiny, that will immediately help and also start you down a path that's going to pay big dividends going forward. So you kind of you kind of guide them to realizing that, actually help them to do it. It's like, hey, we'll take care of this for you. We'll do this together. Here's why we think it's a great idea, and get everybody rolling in the same direction. And then, where you can go from there is it's pretty much the sky's the limit. Although I kind of mixed my metaphors, rowing in the same direction and sky's the limit. little land, sea, and air assault.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is very true. And what we've historically focused on and continue to focus on and make better is that business aspect, right? And that's sort of that first part that you were talking about, and helping people row in the right direction. Make sure the numbers are good. Make sure you get some reports. Help them with KPIs, budgeting, forecasting, right? These are all kind of the nuts and bolts of a business. Thinking about profitability and which levers do you need to push and pull, and you could go on and on and on about like the things that you can do on your business to make it more profitable, make more money, and be more successful. But that's I think that's one big part, right? It's a big part of a business owner's desire, right, is to have their business performing at as high a performance as possible. But the part that's a little bit harder, and this is the part of the nut we're still trying to crack, and that this is where our practice and our business is moving, is how do you integrate that business owner's life, right? Because small businesses, for the most part, are very entangled in the business owner's life or the family's life, right? And we see a lot of it, family run, passed down to generations. You see, closely held, two partners or spouses that are involved in the business, and just the nature of that means that their personal lives and personal goals and desires are kind of getting baked into the business, whether they think about it or not. It's happening.
Exactly.
And I think that there's this kind of hole in a service or in coaching, which is helping the business owners kind of start at the person, right? And figure out, what are your goals? What are you actually trying to achieve? It doesn't have to be a huge process, but you do have to think about it, right? How much money am I making today? How much do I want to be making? And then, where is this business going? I talk to a lot of people when a lot of startups will give us a call, and I'll talk to the person or new prospects. And a question I often ask is, well, what kind of business are you looking for? What are you trying to do with this business? And people get hung up on that more often than you'd think, between, well, do I want this just to be a small business, a small kind of, lifestyle business, really profitable, the business owner stays in the weeds, stays delivering a lot of the work? Or do I want to build this into a business, right? With employees, and where I'm the leader, I'm a CEO. And I always tell people, there isn't a right choice. Both of those businesses can be extremely profitable, extremely well run, and super successful, but they're totally different. And you have to make a decision, right? You have to make a choice on which one you want. And that's kind of how I feel about a lot of these personal thoughts is what are you trying to do? And one thing that business owners never think about retirement, I don't think, or very few think about, I'm going to retire at 65 or whatever.
You don't think about stopping. You're so busy
Never.
starting, you barely think about stopping.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. It's like, I don't want to stop doing this stuff. I'm always going to do something because I love it. Maybe it's different than what I'm doing today, but I'm not going to retire. But I think one thing that business owners should think about is, how do I become financially independent of my business? Or what is the end goal of the business? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to pass it down in the family? Am I going to, have a key employee take it over and do a buyout? You really have to think about the end of that business, or simply, what do you want in your personal life? How do you become independent of the business? Maybe not retirement. And I think that's kind of, something that we're thinking about. How do we do more to help have that conversation and push our services to help that business owner think about that? So often the business is everything, and all of your assets are everything. The business is your whole income and biggest asset.
Everything.
Super dangerous.
Yeah, it's so dangerous, and it's so dangerous because it's so enjoyable. Like, you're doing what you're doing because you love what you do, and that's a dangerous place to be. And it's also a very hard place from which to ask hard questions, especially of yourself. And that's why, and I will be on this soapbox probably at this point now for as long as I have a soapbox to stand on. This is where coaching is special. This is why it's so necessary, is because what a coach can do is they can see what those hard questions are that you kind of understand, like, they're out there, or there's usually a couple different places you're at. You kind of know they're there, but you don't know what the questions are yet. You know what the questions are, but you don't want to ask yourself because you might be afraid of the answer, or you're afraid you don't have one. And that might somehow short circuit everything you've got. There's so many different reasons, but what a coach can do, what a coach thrives at, is coming in and seeing those questions and just asking them, and then waiting for an answer, and then ask it again 5 minutes later. Ask it a little bit differently the next day. Ask it a little bit differently in a month. Don't ask it for three months and then come around and ask it in a big way, like suddenly, surprise, like all these different. That's what a coach really excels at, and it's why I think it's so important. I mean, every coach I talk to pretty much is, at least at one point was, or they still are, the owner operator of their own business, their own successful business. That, and I almost without exception, every single one of them, we end up talking about how much time they spend running their business as opposed to doing their business, coaching, doing the thing they love to do, why they got into this whole thing in the first place. And I love how specifically, almost surgically, you target that with your business. Like, look, you take care of all the stuff for you, all the stuff you know you need done. We know it. We're really good at it. Here's what else we're really good at. Here's this question you maybe have been asking yourself. Let's talk about what that answer looks like for you. Let's talk about what that answer looks like in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years. Let's talk about what that answer looks like regarding how many hours a week you work, how many weeks a month, a year, how many years you want to do this. Do you want to just be in the weeds for the rest of your life? Because you might love that. I want to find out if you do love that, and let's build your business so that you could do that.
Absolutely.
I love it. I'm sorry. I've kept this so much longer than I meant to, because I told you before I hit record, this is such juicy conversational fodder, something that I feel like people love to talk about. And of course, I'm already, almost doubling up the time we booked. But yeah, I just wanted to comment and compliment you on that. I love this mission, and I love the service it provides.
Yeah. I was talking to a good friend of mine just this past weekend, and he's gearing up to leave the country for a year. So he's decided to, the business is on autopilot. He's stepping away from all the things he would have to step away with, and has now set up his life to be able to be away for a year. And he had to go through that same process. So it was all about setting the goalposts. He said, I've been moving the goalposts for 10 years. And, it's really easy to move those goalposts if you never actually set them. You never actually write them down or talk about it with your spouse, and they talked about it. They set the number, and he came within $500 of his number, over his number, I should say. And
nice.
when you write things down and you have a goal and a target, sometimes it's just a matter of thinking about it. Well, how do I make that happen? And he was able to do it. And I think that's something that everyone can learn something from, including myself, is set those targets. You have to. And that's what a coach is there to do, as you were saying.
Well, speaking of targets, Van, please tell me, and by me, I mean everyone who's listening, where they can, it's a two-part question, where they can find out more about what you do. Just if they're curious, or if they're at a point where they have a need. And also, where can people connect with you? I have a feeling that a number of my listeners might want to talk with you, at the very least, just like, shoot the fat, shoot the S, so to speak, about all this stuff. So where can people find out more about you and Accountix, and where do you like to be connected with? Where do you like to meet people for the first time and start a conversation?
Yeah. So our website's probably the best place to learn a little bit about us. So accountixsolutions.com. And that's ACCOUNTIX, and then the word solutions.com. And then connecting with me, I'm a LinkedIn guy. So LinkedIn is probably the best, and I'm /Van Haas, just first, last name, and happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
I love the way you described your name. We have when we have the podcast application form, we have the how do you pronounce it, because obviously some names are a little more challenging than others. And I like that you said it's Van like the car and Haas like the avocado. It tickled me, so I had to share.
You'd be surprised how 7 letters, can be so hard to pronounce.
Well, Van, thank you for talking with me today. Thank you for doing the pod with me. As you know, I love talking with you on a regular basis, and this was just a nice chance to do it in a little bit of a different way. I'm really glad you came on the pod, and I don't know, we might have to just do this again sometime. I feel like we could dive into any one aspect of your journey from, UCSB to Accountix, and just, do another 30-minute conversation. So I may just have to have you back.
Absolutely, Kevin. I'm always game.
So thank you to the audience. I hope and I know you got a lot out of this. So find Van, find out more about him. He's got a lot more to say, and he's fun to talk to. I think you could tell. So thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again very soon.